Now what? Ooh, power. Let me influence people. That's the suggestion about the parties. That all of what happened there is on videotape. Now you can blackmail people. If you can blackmail people, now you've got real power. So now everything that you want is available to you, but everything still feels empty and meaningless. So you stare into that, and then all of a sudden, like there's no rules, there's no law, you can't get in trouble. He'd already beaten how many cases before that? Yeah. And so you end up in this spiral where it turns out that the things that make life valuable, by the way, turns out that the things that make life valuable are the rules. Which sounds weird, but hear me out. And what gives meaning and purpose to life is the limitations. Today matters. Why? Because you may not have tomorrow. That's what makes life valuable. The fact that you might not have another day. Today might be all there is. Yesterday, that's a memory, dude. Tomorrow, that's a hope. I hope we all get there together. But the only thing that's real in your life is this moment right now. So what that means is that the most important thing in the world is whatever you're doing right now. It's important because you're doing it right now. You're not doing it because it's important because you're doing it right now. And that's what makes life valuable. The rules. That fence us in. And so embrace them. Embrace them. Make sense? In other words, none of us knows all the time. Well, none of us really knows how the world sees us. We know how we think we come off. But sometimes you ever find out that like the way you see yourself is different from the way that other people see you? It's a nice thing when it's in the positive. Like maybe you don't see yourself as being super smart, but everybody around you like asks you questions and talks about how smart you are, but you just don't think of it. That's a nice way. But sometimes like you don't realize that people see you in a negative way when you think that you see yourself in a positive way. And so by the same token, by the way, girls would show up wearing like, jeans that are like too big and what are they called? Wife beaters. Yeah, tank top. So they're wearing a tank top and they've got like facial hair like drawn in, and the girls always come in like with those dead eyes. So. I told you, okay, and then this is how those girls see guys. So on those days, you could see how the two sexes saw each other, And then some of them, like there were a few of them. Like I said, they went to that extreme. I would not be surprised if they're dressing like women today. Some of those guys, because they seem to really look forward to it every day. They were like planning it out, for weeks ahead of time. You sit there and go, got it, I know who you are. Yeah. And why couldn't you go back? Actually, first let me ask you this. What would be an example of a bad decision that's a monster? An alcoholic? Okay. Does anybody choose that?
Yeah.
Oh. Wait. Like you sit out and you're like, you know what? I'm going to be an alcoholic. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to be great at it. And I'm going to be a great alcoholic. But by the way, that's a scary part of it, because no one sets out like that. Like any of you guys ever sit there and like looked at a homeless person, schizophrenic, and you're just like, dude, someday I'm going to be the most famous homeless person in all of National City. One of my former students used to say that homeless people are like Pokemon characters. They all have their own like special powers and abilities. Like if I were to tell you, oh, you know that one homeless guy, he does the push-ups over in front of Chuck E. Cheese. You might be like, oh yeah, I know that guy who wears the camo pants. Yeah, that guy. In other words, you can identify them by the weird shit that they do. But I wonder if they ever sat there and saw a homeless person when they were that age and thought, man, someday that's going to be me. I'm looking forward to that. No, just one day they had the genes that kind of led in that direction, and then one day they shot up heroin. There you go. Well, it probably started differently, but it took them in that direction. So anyway, but you kind of choose at a certain point to continue in the alcohol, though, right? Okay, so in that case there, so what stops you from going from alcoholic back to a non-monster? Yeah.
Support.
Ooh. So we have these underlying things there. So addicted, true. And then a lack of support. Okay. There's no Alcoholics Anonymous. You've heard of this before? Do you know what their success rate is? Anybody know? Because it's a well-known program, right? Really successful. I think they self-report that their success rate is something like 8%. Something like that. It's under 10%.
8.
Yeah. Yeah. So like of every 100 people who go there and say, "Hi, my name is Scanlon S. and I am an alcoholic." Out of every 100 who show up there, only about 10 actually stop drinking. It's actually less than 10. I think it's like 8 out of 8, so about 8 out of 100 or so. So that's important because again, we don't set out to become this. But then again, none of us becomes this overnight. It's a lot of decisions. It's the decision to show up on Friday night and say, you know, yeah, let me try that alcohol. Let me try that. And then show up Saturday, and then show up again next weekend, and then a lot of that process before you finally end up at this addicted place. And then it also kind of reminds us, like, the support. Like, what's the difference in some cases between people who are homeless and people who are not? Sometimes it's exactly that they're addicted to something. They got a hold of something, and then something got a hold of them. And then they didn't have the family system around them, or they didn't have the support system around them to help them get out of it. It's like, you know, we say we shouldn't give money to homeless people because they're just going to use it for drugs and alcohol. Not like us, right? None of us do that. So then I guess, yeah, exactly. But I'm sure you have friends who do that. And what's the difference between our friends and the homeless people sometimes? Sometimes it's just that support structure. Sometimes it's just that, you know, you can go through things and not become addicted. Is anybody in here, like you, if you're willing to say, like you have that kind of a personality that you get addicted easily to things, or you take things to an extreme? Yeah, I'm that guy. That's why I've had alcohol once in my life. That's it. Nobody ever believed me when I say that, because everyone thinks like I'm drunk and high all the time. No, this is me sober. Now why? Though, because I know myself. I know that if I started drinking, I would go to the market and say, yeah, let me get one of everything on this aisle, and I would try everything. Same reason I don't do drugs. If I did drugs, I would do all of them. I know myself. So, but a lot of times we just don't know ourselves. And so because we don't know ourselves, we fall into that addiction because we engage in the behavior that eventually leads us down that road. There's a narcissism there that says, oh, dude, other people, but not me. I could never become addicted. I'm too strong. I'm too this. I'm too that. And that is hubris. Hubris is like, it's a pride that comes before a massive fall. And that, I would never, is almost always the tip-off that you're about to. Or something like this. In other words, I would never get addicted to alcohol. That's usually what a person says right before they do. It's the person who's aware of their weakness in areas that allows them to stay strong. And so what I suggest is I like Oscar that talks about the monster being a metaphor for something else. Are there literal monsters in the world? I don't know if there are any actual literal monsters in the world. Almost all the monsters that we can think of are metaphorical. Like, even if we think about some of history's worst people, I mean, they're still humans. But at the same time, we describe them as monsters. And so in the same way that we're trying to figure out if there's a big difference between us and the homeless people, I wonder if there's such a big difference between us and some of the worst monsters in the world. Like I was just talking last period about, what's his name? Kohlberger, I think his name is. If you guys saw this case, it just got settled recently. It was a guy who killed 4 college students over in Indiana. Idaho. You heard about this? Yeah, the guy he went into a house, murdered 4 people, and then he got caught. And he got caught in a really stupid way. He had a knife. Well, first off, he bought the knife on Amazon. So once the police knew what they were looking for, they knew how to. They just subpoenaed Amazon's records, and they found out who ordered a knife in that area, and he was the only one. So it was pretty easy to find. But the guy, when he started the murder rampage, apparently had the knife like in a sheath. Boom, pulled the knife out, dropped the sheath, and then started killing people. And then when he left, he forgot the sheath at the murder scene. You know, imagine if you're driving home and you're like, duh. And cell phone records show that the guy went back to the scene the next morning, like early in the morning, not like hours later to see if anybody, like, it's almost like he realized, oh my God, I forgot the thing at the crime scene. And he went back to get it, but the cops were already there, so then he was screwed. But this is a guy who people are all shocked by, because they're thinking like, how could he have done it? Everybody says he was so smart. He was a PhD student. He was getting his doctorate in criminology. Yeah, so now it sounds more familiar, yeah? And now, criminology is different from forensics. Criminology means, why do people commit crimes that they commit? And so you study like the psychology of people, yeah.
Did he want to commit the perfect crime scene?
Here's the funny thing, we don't know.
No?
No, we have no idea why. That's probably it.
Okay.
That's probably it, but here's the thing. Did he, going back to like this case here with the cross-dressing YouTuber, I'll get there. Did he go into criminology because he wanted to commit the perfect crime? Or was he somebody who was like fascinated by killing and murdering and all that stuff, so then he went into it, you know, like which came first? Was he already a murderer, or did he go into that because he wanted to become a murderer? Yeah.
I saw the documentary and it said that he studied all it just to quit the murder.
But here's the thing, he hasn't given any statements, we don't know, but that's what we think. Yeah, like we think like he wanted, in fact, we're not even exactly sure how he knew them, which is weird because the guy just pled guilty a few days ago, actually last week. And so he just got sentenced to 4 life sentences. And we aren't even exactly sure how he knew the murder victims, but we do know that he knew them because we have cell phone data that show that he was at their house, and here's the trip. He was at their house at least a dozen times before the murders, stalking them, staking out the place. And here's the really creepy part, man. The house itself was 3 stories. It was like a maze inside, apparently, like stairways that went in weird ways. The rooms weren't really connected very closely. So then how did he know how to move around inside the house? Because the people who were at the house used to post TikToks all the time. Themselves doing dances, talking to each other, screaming around at night. He learned the layout of the whole house by watching TikTok videos. So these people who were probably, university students were probably like, we're safe, we're not posting anything. Somehow he got on their followers. Somehow he was able to watch them. He was able to go to the house. They had no idea they were being stalked on TikTok. They had no idea they were being stalked outside their house at least a dozen times. Yeah, Jess. It kind of goes with what Guy was saying about it, that maybe he wanted to commit the perfect crime. And so, but keep in mind again that forensics is different from criminology. Criminology is, why do people do the things that they do? How can we study crime? How can we stop it? Forensics is, well, we didn't stop this crime. We have a murder scene and 4 dead people, so now let's gather evidence. That's forensics. And he didn't do forensics. And that's how he got caught. The sheath had some DNA from his skin cells on the button, like on the button where you can snap it closed, like snap something closed. The only DNA he left behind was that, some skin cells on a sheath on a knife that he apparently tore off before he went to work. That was the comparison match. Yeah, because they found the skin cells, but they didn't know who they belonged to. Then they were going through his trash, and they actually found a DNA from his dad, not from him, because he was taking his trash and bagging it separately and then driving around town to throw it away. So they didn't have DNA from him. And here's the weird thing. You're his family, don't you? Okay, well, you're going to drive around town and drop off trash tonight, huh? And then when the cops actually raided his house, the SWAT team, he was sorting out trash and he was wearing rubber gloves while he was sorting out the trash. And his family knew that, and they just said, oh, he's just quirky, I guess. He just likes to wear gloves when he sorts out trash. And so so they got the DNA from his father because they went through the trash, and it was a close enough match because it was the son that they were able to get a warrant to go search for, to go in and get his DNA. So then they arrested him, got his DNA, and then he was caught, yeah. But my point is this, that guy, here's the question. Was he a monster? Or is he a guy who he was kind of like a loner, so he got interested in true crime? And then he just, rather than just get interested in true crime, like some people get addicted to alcohol, some people get addicted to Turkish black mule heroin, some people get addicted to true crime. I'm not going to ask, but I'm kind of curious if anybody in here is addicted to true crime and getting away with the perfect murder. So some people, you can maybe get so addicted to it that then you start thinking like, I wonder if I could pull off a murder. And you guys ever think about that? Don't raise your hands. but I know who you are. You ever think about, I wonder if I could get away with a bank robbery. But we had a whole plan up, but the thing is, how many times do you have to get it wrong before you go to jail for 20 years or 25 years? In his case here, how many things did he have to get wrong? Just the sheath. But it begs this question about the monster then. Because the monster, because we all have those intrusive thoughts. I asked that question almost rhetorically because I know the answer. I'm sure everybody in here has had some kind of a thought like, I wonder if I could get away with a murder. I wonder if I could get away with a bank robbery. I wonder if I could rob an armored truck. Ooh, you're standing on Highland and there's somebody in front of you with the AirPods in. You're like, I could push this person out into traffic. You know? Or worse yet, you're standing in a high place and you're looking down and you're like, I could jump. No, don't. Those intrusive thoughts. And the question is, when you have those intrusive thoughts, do you shove them out of your mind? Or are you addicted in the same way that a person can be addicted to alcohol? You're addicted to those intrusive thoughts where you go into it and you don't really want to, but you indulge in it. And then pretty soon it becomes just seeing it to wanting it. Yeah, Jess.
You said the question about the dreams. If you gaze long into the abyss, like what does it mean?
An abyss?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like what does it mean?
So darkness. So if you stare into darkness, how long until you become a dark person yourself? You know? Some of you guys are so fucked, man. What I mean by that is, let me get my podium. In my day, when I was your all's age, we didn't have the internet. Well, we did, but it was still new. And if you wanted to see dead bodies, you'd have to get a videotape called Faces of Death. And they're like these little VHS tapes, which would be like, you want to see a video of someone dying? Your friends would be like, oh, dude, I have a video of a guy getting eaten by a lion. And then you'd watch it. And it was always like really like distant, grainy footage. And you'd be like, whoa, that's messed up. Right now, some of you guys just heard Faces of Death, huh? And you can go on your phone right now and go watch it. But you'll see high quality digital video of that stuff. In other words, all that stuff is so available to you that if you're interested in darkness, you don't have to leave your phone. You don't have to leave. Even if you have one of those screen protectors where people can't even see over your shoulder, you could sit there right now at your desk and watch all that. When you get to a point where you have when you have so much money, like we think about like $1 billion. Do you have any idea how much money $1 billion is? Do the math on that. Like add up, multiply out how many days you think you're going to be alive. Let's say you live to be 100 years old, and multiply that by 365, and then divide that by $1 billion. And it'll occur to you, you don't have enough days in your life to spend $1 billion. It's not possible. So for all intents and purposes, you have $1 billion or 50 billion, it's all the same at that point. So you have all the money in the world to do whatever you want to do. Now what? Ooh. Well, what's the first thing you get, guys? First, you get the money. Yes? Then you get, who knows? Then you get the power. Maybe you've seen Scarface? So first you get the money. Once you have the money, you can't spend it. So what do you do with it? Well, you use it for power. Because you can't spend it. Oh, but I can. Oh, here's some money, Stephen. Go do this. Oh, okay. Yes, sir. You use the money to get the power, to get the things that you want out of life. And so then you get all that, and then you kind of run out of stuff. So now what? And imagine this guy who starts off his life where he has, what's his hope in life? It's like, in his mind, he's thinking one day, he literally said this, I want to be a millionaire. And he thought to himself, no, I don't want to be a millionaire. I want to have 10 million. That was his goal when he was growing up. He wanted $10 million. And all of a sudden, the guy's worth over $1 billion. In other words, now it's kind of like, I don't know, my life is still meaningless though. Now what? Ooh, power. Let me influence people. That's the suggestion about the parties. And all of what happened there is on videotape. Now you can blackmail people. If you can blackmail people, now you've got real power. So now everything that you want is available to you, but everything still feels empty and meaningless. So you stare into that, and then all of a sudden, like there's no rules, there's no law, you can't get in trouble. He'd already beaten how many cases before that? Yeah. And so you end up in this spiral where it turns out that the things that make life valuable, by the way, turns out that the things that make life valuable are the rules. Which sounds weird, but hear me out. And this is true psychologically. If we were to sit here and play Monopoly, and we start putting out the money, and as you're like dividing out the money, I start putting hotels on all the spaces. You'd be like, well, what are you doing? I'm putting out hotels. Why? Because I want to win. Yeah, but that's not how the game is played. That's how I play it, putting out hotels. And then you'd be like, well, if you're putting all the hotels out, well, then I'm going to take all the money. So you start taking all the money. Well, if you're taking all the money, I'm taking your piece, so you can't even play at all. And then eventually we get pissed off each other. One of us flips the board up and we walk away. Because you can't play Monopoly without rules. That's the only way it makes sense. Imagine if tomorrow scientists discovered this medication, this drug that would allow you to live for eternity. So now, how much does today matter? Yeah, how much does tomorrow matter? There's always tomorrow. So now the days of your life don't mean anything. They don't matter because you've always got another one. And so what ends up happening is people who, it would lead to a despair in us, a darkness in us, because nothing matters. One of the things that we need as human beings is purpose and meaning. If we don't have purpose and meaning, we die. What leads to suicide? I'll give you a heads up, it's not depression. There's a connection between depression and suicide, but here's the connection. It's not just, I'm sad. And by the way, clinical depression, true clinical depression does not really lead to suicide, because real clinical depression means you don't have the motivation to do almost anything in life. You just lay there. And if you know someone who's had real depression, that's what it is. You just feel like laying around all day. You don't feel like doing anything. You don't feel like getting up. You don't feel like killing yourself. You don't feel like making a sandwich. It all feels the same. Suicide comes from a sense of hopelessness. Things are never going to get better. Whatever I'm going through right now is never going to get better. That's why suicide is a disease of the very young and the very wealthy. So if you're young, you've got something in common with wealthy people. What that means is that when you're young, you don't have a frame of reference. If you have, think about where you are in your life right now. Let's say, okay, better yet, imagine you're really, really poor in your life. I would say to you, congratulations. That's a pretty cool place to start, by the way. Doesn't feel like it, but I promise you it is, because here's why. You have the ability to take risks that other people don't have the ability to take. You go for a risk in life, like you're going to start a business. So you work, you save up some money, and you're going to start the business. What's the worst that can happen? Yeah, go bankrupt, and you end up poor. Ooh, that's Tuesday, dude. You grew up that way. Now imagine if you grew up with a bunch of money, and what's on the line is your whole family's net worth. And if you screw that up, you lose generations of wealth. And then you screw that up. Well, now nothing can be better. Everything, all of life is now meaningless. Or worse yet, you grow up wealthy and you have everything, like Diddy has everything now. And yet somehow still things feel meaningless. That makes us feel like there's something inherently and intuitively wrong with us. Because I have everything I'm supposed to want, right? I have everything. I should be happy, but I'm not. Well, then maybe I'm just not capable of being happy. Maybe I'm just uniquely cursed and miserable. And things are never going to get better. And that's why rich people kill themselves. Young people, because they don't have the perspective to say, yeah, things are messed up right now, but they're going to get better. Because if you've lived long enough, you know that life is kind of like this. It oscillates. Things get better and worse, better and worse. Hopefully more better than they do get worse. But if you've gone through something terrible and you've come out the other end, that gives you a perspective to know no matter how bad things are, they can always get better. On the other side, if you're wealthy and yet you have the perspective of that, but you're not happy and you don't know why, and then you feel like you never can be, so then you kill yourself. Two things that have in common. So what I'm suggesting to you is that we need meaning, we need purpose. Without those things, and what gives meaning and purpose to life is the limitations. Today matters. Why? because you may not have tomorrow. And that's something to say academically. I'm going to a funeral later today for a friend of mine. Guy was 51 years old. Dude died. He went to the hospital to get checked for back pain. He had cancer. And here he is, gone, so many months later. I was just talking to him a few weeks ago. I was sitting in his hotel room. We were making jokes. He was laughing so hard, he said it hurt. And I said, okay, I'll stop joking. He said, no, keep. And this guy, I was sitting there 2 weeks ago, and I had a dream about him. And we were here at school, and he had a van, and I was helping him pack up his stuff. And I was aware that it was a dream. I was lucid. I was aware that it was a dream. And this friend of mine, he was walking, which was cool, and we were packing up his van. He didn't have a van, but we were packing up his van, and he was like, basically we were saying goodbye. He was loading up his truck, and I'm like, huh. And then the very next day, I got word that he'd passed away. Now, do you think that this is a guy who knows a little bit about, I wish I had just one more day? That's what makes life valuable. The fact that you might not have another day. Today might be all there is. Yesterday, that's a memory, dude. Tomorrow, that's a hope. I hope we all get there together. But the only thing that's real in your life is this moment right now. And so what that means is that the most important thing in the world is whatever you're doing right now. It's important because you're doing it right now. You're not doing it because it's important because you're doing it right now. And that's what makes life valuable. The rules. That fence us in. And so, embrace them. Embrace them. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticism, critiques? Happy Tuesday, huh? We start off with serial killers and we end up with cancer. Jeez.